Well, good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Squadron Leader Gerard Markham. After Gallipoli, Australian troops made their way to the Western Front, taking position at Amateur, a relatively quiet sector of the front used to condition new troops to the rigours and routine of fighting in France. Their first action occurred on the 5th of May 1916, 105 years ago today. Just on dusk, a German reconnaissance aircraft buzzed overhead and dropped a small red balloon. Minutes later, a bombardment crashed down on positions held by the 5th Brigade. After a 2-hour battering, stunned and weary survivors emerged to find trenches violently ripped apart and German machine guns stammering away at gaps in the parapet. It was the most concentrated bombardment the Australians had endured so far, costing them 23 men killed, 72 wounded, and 13 missing in action. German troops had raided the Bridos salient, killing and plundering in close quarters, fighting before withdrawing with 2 Stokes mortars, a rifle grenade battery and 11 prisoners, who had the misfortune of being the first Australians to come face to face with German troops in France. Over the following weeks, the Australians redeemed themselves through a series of counter-raids that asserted dominance over no man's land and gave newly formed units important combat experience before their transfer to the Somme. Today, we pay our respects to the men and women commemorated here on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. We're honoured to welcome Wing Commander Michael Garside, Australian War Memorial Air Force Fellow. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. And during this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is a tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catapult party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. If you're able, I invite you to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Edward Whitbread. Edward Whitbread, known to friends and family as Tom, was born on the 7th of March 1887 at Kapunda, South Australia, the son of Alfred and Elizabeth Whitbread. Having grown up at Baggots Gap and attended Baggot Gap's public school, by the time the First World War began, Whitbread was working as a farm labourer. Edward Whitbread travelled to Adelaide, enlisting in the Australian Imperial Force on the 8th of June 1915. After his initial training, he was allocated to reinforcements to the 10th Battalion, embarking from Outer Harbour, Adelaide, on the transport ship Encases on the 2nd of September. After a brief stop in Egypt, he was sent to join the 10th Battalion, to Mudros, joining his unit in late November. By this time, the Gallipoli campaign was drawing to a close, and the battalion had been withdrawn. The battalion returned to Egypt in December, and over the next 3 months was able to rest, refit, and train for war on the Western Front. Whitbread embarked from Alexandria with the 10th Battalion on the 27th of March 1916, bound for France. After disembarking at Marseille a week later, the battalion was sent to Strasbourg in northern France for further training. Before that, they entered the front line at Fleury at the beginning of June. In early July, the battalion was sent south to the Somme to join the British Somme offensive. On the 23rd of July 1916, Whitbread saw action for the first time. During his battalion's attack at the village of Pozières, he was severely wounded. Evacuated to the 44th Casualty Clearing Station, his wounds were found to be mortal. He died on the 25th of July and was laid to rest in the Puchveillère Military Cemetery. He was 29 years old. Further tragedy befell the Whitbread family when Edward's younger brother Leslie was seriously wounded in August as the 48th Battalion was defending Pozières. Leslie was sent to England, where he developed lobar pneumonia. This, combined with his wound, proved fatal, and he died on the 8th of September 1916 at the age of 24. Edward Whitbread's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Edward Whitbread, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If you're able, please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Catapult party, present.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.